Where else would you rather be? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome to the people of Penn State. Each week on the podcast, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State Network. Well, talking about the Penn State Network today, we're going to talk with Rebecca Friese. Becky has over 2 decades as a workplace crusader. Wow, we're going to ask her about that title, workplace crusader. Rebecca is a seasoned management leader dedicated to transforming organizations. From Fortune 500 giants to burgeoning startups, she navigates outdated practices, fostering the capacity for impactful cultural changes. On a mission to enhance workplaces, Becky champions the innovative, engaging, and forward-thinking environments. Having witnessed the repercussions of dismal work experiences, dejected employees, disengagement, attrition, she endeavors to create workplaces that inspire and motivate. As the author of The Good Culture, A Leader's Guide to Creating a Workplace That Doesn't Suck, Becky is also the co-founder of FLYN, co-lead at the Samudra Next Generation Leadership Trust, and the founder of 12 at 12 Women's Network. Welcome to the people of Penn State, Becky Friese. Becky, how are you today?
Great. Thank you for that intro. I'm just so happy to be here. Thanks, Paul.
Well, share with us, where in the world are you right now? Are you at home?
I am at home. I live in Marin County, north of San Francisco in the Bay Area.
It sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's start right at the very beginning. How did you become a Penn State Nittany Lion?
It's funny because I need to give a shout out to my brother here, who is also a Penn State alum. So my brother Whit Friese, who is advertising, graduated 90, was at Penn State when I was looking at schools. And I begrudgingly give him credit because I actually almost didn't go to Penn State because of him, because I wanted to kind of forge my own path. And I felt like my brother had stolen the ideal college from my options. But because he was there, I was exposed to it and I was able to see what it was all about. But I grew up in Chicago, and in Chicagoland, for those in the know what that means. I was in a suburb of Chicago. And I had some basically requirements for my college, which went like this. I wanted it to be far away from home. I wanted to experience something different than what I'd grown up with. So I had a requirement that it couldn't be in state and it couldn't be in a touching state. I needed a 1-state buffer from my home. It needed to be a large school. I somehow set my sights on 20,000 undergraduates or more. It needed to be. I wanted to be in a place where I could try a lot of different things and meet a lot of different people and have a lot of opportunity. I needed it to have a good sports team because I had witnessed my parents, having gone to University of Iowa, kind of the connection that having a good school spirit that was created by some good sports teams, and what that created from a community standpoint. So Penn State obviously fit that bill. And then I needed to have a good program for what I was going into, which was advertising. So, and the College of Communications at Penn State was fantastic. So that's how I landed on Penn State. So my brother, while I give him credit for opening my eyes to Penn State, he almost was the reason why I didn't go.
That's a great story. It's funny. I know a number of people who live in Chicago that went to Iowa. I think there's more people from Chicago who go to Iowa than people from Iowa.
It's very possible. Iowa. Tons of my classmates went to Iowa. Yeah, Iowa, Illinois, all the Big Ten. And that was also just like a beautiful thing that ended up happening because we had just joined the Big Ten when I decided to go. And so it was like this nice kismet, camaraderie with the Big Ten schools and being from the Midwest.
Well, we're glad you didn't pick a second-tier Big Ten school to go to.
Right, exactly. Love you all, but yeah.
So, Becky, I know you came to Penn State and you kind of got fully immersed into the community here. Talk about some of the activities that you were involved in while you were here.
It was hard for me because I wanted to get involved in everything. I remember going to the kind of the activities fair that happens at the beginning of the school year. Hopefully it still happens. I assume it does. At the time, there was over 500 student organizations that were represented. I remember that number and thinking like, wow, like, how do I whittle it down and get involved? But one thing that I knew I wanted to do was join a sorority. And I knew that that would help me really hone in on finding a community quickly. And so that was the first thing I did was I joined a sorority. I went through a sorority rush at the beginning of the year. And that ended up being my really platform and lever for all the other things that I did. So, fast forward, I actually ended up becoming I was my pledge class president. And I ended up getting involved in Penn, which is the governing body of the sorority system at Penn State. And I ended up becoming the president of Panhellenic Council was my final like big role that I had at Penn State. But that actually afforded me to get introduced into all other aspects of the university and get involved in a ton of other activities through that leadership position. So I was the co-chair of the University Student Advisory Board because of it. I was in Lion's Paw, which was an honor society for leaders at Penn State, and multiple other opportunities kind of opened up just from that first initial decision to join a sorority.
Now look at you telling all the secrets. I thought Lion's Paw was a secret, like a no-no.
It is a secret society from that standpoint. But that's all I'm going to tell you.
That's all I need to know.
And I think, for the record, the reason why it's a secret society is because it's not about awards and honors. It is about giving an opportunity for those who serve the university to do even more with collaboration of other student leaders. And so that is the reason why it is secret, because it's not about recognition.
Yeah, humility and humble service, right?
Humility and humble service. Yes. Thank you, Paul. Yeah. And also I am a lead of one of our committees of the Alumni Association, which is our Lion's Paw Medal, which we do award publicly. So little plug for that. Because it is the only award at the university right now that really commemorates service above and beyond to the students and to the community at Penn State. So so I'm very proud of being part of that organization and the work that we do.
Yeah, it's a great organization. It's one of the worst kept secrets here at Penn State.
I know, it's true. It's true.
So you mentioned advertising, that you wanted to come to Penn State because of the great College of Communications. So what was the initial career outcome, right? Nobody comes to Penn State saying, I want to be a consultant, right? Which is where your career has.
That's such a great question, because when I was at Penn State, so hilariously, I was really interested in advertising. I did my career report on it in high school. I don't know, those of you in high school or just having graduated, the career report. And I remember thinking, like, what's something creative that I can do that will still make me a lot of money? I swear that was my, those were my indices to evaluate. And I really fell in love with the concept of advertising, and I just was fascinated by it. And it's interesting because if I think back about like who I am and what I do, and that ability to really understand people and understand what their needs are and figure out how to communicate best, there's a thread there, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So hilariously, I then ended up minoring in speech comms. So like I doubled down on communication in my career. In my studies, I was like, advertising and then speech comms. So it was like all the different ways that you can communicate effectively. And I found myself looking at this career, which I was like, I didn't really want to be pigeonholed as either a creative or as a media person. I didn't want to go to a small firm. I wanted to go to a big firm. And I was really struggling. And I actually, and this thread will come up a lot, it was through my network of Penn State friends and leaders who had gone into consulting just before me, who basically like tapped me on the shoulder and said, I actually think that you're really well suited for this, and check it out. And I was like, what is a consultant, and how can a 22-year-old actually be a consultant and give business advice, right? So I found the whole thing fascinating. I was like, okay, I'll go to an information session and see what it's all about. And that information session was Anderson Consulting. They'd come on campus. And I remember they were looking for people that knew a lot about communication and understanding people and organizations. And that was something that, through my tenure at Penn State as a student leader, I'd been really focusing on was how do you lead? How do you manage an organization? And so here they were saying, no, those are the skills that we want and need in order to help organizations. The specific group that I got recruited into was called change management. And so my love affair with change and organizations began right there.
This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined today by Becky Friese from the class of 93. She's the co-founder and managing partner of FLYN. So you graduate from Penn State. You talked about kind of the Anderson interaction. Walk us through your early career.
Oh gosh, it's so interesting because my early career, jumping like 2 feet into Accenture, it's now called, it was Anderson Consulting. Now I'm totally dating myself. For those of you who have probably never heard of Anderson Consulting. Those early days, it was so great because like going to Penn State, going to Accenture, you already had this like set community that was large, and there was people that had been there, for decades before you, and they had cohorts of people. I had my start group that I connected with really quickly, and these were all really high achievers and people that had done great things during college. And I just felt like I had found my home and my calling. That was such a great transition from being at a place like Penn State. So I was immediately put in a cohort with everybody that I'd started with. I am still dear friends with some of those people that I started with on day one. I was just on a call with one of those people earlier today. And you start in this environment that was really focused on learning and growing as a leader. And so you'd get put on projects, but you were never alone. You were with people that, you had a manager there and you had a partner there, and they really shaped you into, that career very quickly. They were so focused on your own development and then the knowledge exchange across. It was a real intense yet fantastic experience. I won't say that it wasn't hard. Those first 5 years, I worked a lot, but we had a very also very, very lateral experience. It was a very work hard, play hard environment that, we were all really dedicated to the work, but we also really enjoyed each other. And what I've always said about them is they found a great way to recruit the exact right person that could succeed there and thrive there. So you never, the attrition was very natural, and their hiring was just spot on. So yeah, so my first 5 years were just project to project, learning and growing from people, from huge projects to like a Dow Chemical to, very small projects that, Chicago-based insurance firms, et cetera. And just really just learning everything I could about how organizations and people change and how to manage that.
So from there, you go to be the VP of people at Creditland, right? But then I want to focus on the next two parts of your career. One as an independent film producer, and then as an actor. Tell me about that.
Oh, I let you know about that, didn't I?
Are you on IMDb? Can I find you?
Yeah, oh gosh, no, don't look at it. It's okay. No, I actually, so coming out of Accenture, the one thing that I felt, earlier I mentioned that like intersection of like creativity, but also make money. So Accenture was really, really good at repeatable processes, and they knew how to, like, once they'd locked something in, they knew how to kind of translate that to the next client and have that impact be repeatable. And I completely admired that, but I felt like I'd hit a plateau with my ability to actually bring creative ideas to the table. And, it was more just about executing really, really well, which very valuable. And I was very proud of the work that I did there, but I just felt like I needed a change. And so I kind of sat back and was like, okay, what industry can I really then go back to this kind of creative and, operational mix of skills that I had? And film production kind of rose to the top. And Penn State connection. My sister-in-law also went to Penn State, and she was in film production, and she connected me with her dear friend who had been working in the Bay Area doing film production. And next thing you know, I'm on an NSYNC music video shoot, and getting catering and meeting Justin Timberlake. So I mean, it's just you never know where these crazy things are going to go. So I did that for a year, and then I realized that film production actually wasn't that creative. That again, I was just kind of executing all the production pieces, and tons of learnings from that. Talk about well-oiled machine and role clarity. And when you think about functioning organizations, like the ability for a film set to get up and running and before the sun has even come up. But I decided that I really wanted to hang up my production hat and try my hand at acting, which I had done when I was younger, and hadn't really done since I'd gone to Penn State. So I started doing acting. And to support that, I started consulting on the side. I called it my waitressing job. I was like, I'm just gonna do some consulting on the side, and that's my waitressing job, so that I can go out and act. And my actor friends were really jealous. They're like, how do I get a consulting job so I can make more money than just acting, just waiting on tables and bartending?
That's amazing. Anything we've seen you in?
Really funny. This is the only thing that's like widely distributed. There's a John Cusack film called Grace is Gone. Okay. You don't even have to watch the whole film, although you should. It's a beautiful film. I'm in the trailer, and that is my the total amount of time I'm in the film is actually in the trailer. So you can see that I was a featured extra at the beginning of the film.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So from your acting career, you then transitioned back into your waitress job, right? You then transitioned back into consulting and coaching and kind of getting more in on the innovation sphere. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was an interesting transition because I actually started my family. So my son was born in 2006. Gosh, don't let him hear me say that incorrectly. He was born in 2006, and I had we had just moved to New York, and I had kind of this realization that like I really can't pursue acting right now because even if I could find a way to get to auditions with a newborn, gosh, what if I actually got something and then suddenly I have rehearsals and performances on the weekends or whatever that looked like. And so I realized that I had to put a pause on acting. And so I was looking at my life and I was like, okay, my waitressing job wasn't really that fulfilling. I wanted to kind of take back into control the work that I was doing and really make that meaningful for me and focus on that work so that it was something that actually fulfilled me, since I wasn't going to be able to do the acting. So that was when my coaching practice was born. And I realized that all the stuff that I'd learned about change management in organizations really came down to the individual. And so what I did was I just pulled that process and that knowledge and that approach to say, well, how do I help individuals make the changes that they want to make in their life? And so that was when my coaching practice was born. Simultaneously, I'd started talking with and interviewing with an innovation company called What If in New York. They were out of the UK. They had a New York office that serviced the Americas, and they were really building out their culture and capability practice. And that was all about really helping organizations understand how to be more innovative, how to actually do it themselves versus kind of like giving them the fish, right? We were teaching them how to fish. And they were really interested in my ability to train, communicate, and help that change and transition with organizations focused on innovation. And so, about 3 years into me having my own coaching business and kind of like activating that change management practice, they came a calling, and I saw it as an incredible opportunity to build out my skill set and have a wider impact with that work. And so yeah, I worked at What If for a couple of years, really teaching people everything from understanding what design thinking is and how, the tools, the behaviors, the mindsets, the approach to being innovative and applying that, but also like how to culturally look at creating a more innovative organization so that you can then breed new ideas and innovation into your organization.
I know a couple of different times when you and I have talked, we have talked about change and change management, right? One of your areas of expertise is how to ignite change, but you take a maybe not a different, but a really intentional approach by igniting change through inspiration and connection. Talk a little bit about how that's like the in your mind the ideal routes for organizations to change and improve.
Oh gosh, kind of hitting at the heart of it, and I love it. So, look, we all experience change, and you'll hear organizations say it's happening more rapid, like we're going through this. But the bottom line is we're always growing, we're always changing, we're always evolving. And so this kind of concept of like how do you embrace change, understand how to approach it proactively, right? Both for yourself and if you're leading change. That's something that, again, this has been like a thread right through my entire career, and something I'm really passionate about, because I do believe that we can be proactive in it, even if it's something that is happening to us. So the inspiration and connection piece, that's part of the purpose of FLYN, my company. It's this great peanut butter chocolate moment that happened for me coming out of What If and really understanding innovation and design thinking, that so much of this is about getting out of our current mindset and really being able to step back, look beyond, understand bigger context, understand how problems are solved elsewhere in the world, et cetera. So to be inspired by others, whether that's other companies or other people, to be connected to other companies in order to really understand those ideas. We don't have all the answers in ourselves, right? And so, the connections for me are so important, because you just never know. You never know when you're going to inspire somebody, or somebody's going to inspire you, or they're going to say the right thing at the right time to get you over that hump or whatnot. So it all comes down to this like humanness of around our wider connections. To be able to navigate change, to be more resilient, to be able to embrace the growth, and to really lean into it and direct it and be proactive. And I really feel like those two components around inspiration and connection are just so important. Sometimes we just kind of bury our heads in the sand and don't look up and out, and we miss out because of that.
I think about your kind of formal educational training, right, in the advertising and the advertising space, right? And I think about the work that you've eventually transitioned into working with teams, right, and change management. And I think that there's a lot of parallels, right? You're essentially trying to, on the advertising side, right, impact consumer behavior, right? Well, you're on this side, the people side of it, right? You're trying to inspire how people kind of come to work, buy into culture, and kind of, move them to maybe not a purchasing action, but a buying in action.
Yeah, I mean, what is advertising? It is literally about, a way to help people, make decisions, buying decisions, right? And it is about their behavior. And Paul, it took me 2 decades to figure out that was the throughput. Like, you just summed it up in like 2 sentences. But I think, back to Anderson Consulting being a great recruiting engine, they knew that if they recruited people that had deep expertise or passion around communication and how to have impactful communication and how to influence with your communication, that they knew that was the skill set that they needed in order to help with change management or whatever it is that we're trying to do. I mean, I would put this up to like leadership qualities, obviously, et cetera. So yeah, that, it was housed in advertising, almost like the shiny object, the sexy side of communication, right? But ultimately those tenets are exactly the same across whatever you're trying to, influence or communicate or get connection on or whatever the end goal of your communication is.
So combining all your experience together, right? You've worked in so many different kind of industries and avenues throughout your career. You decide that you're going to write a book, The Good Culture, a leader's guide to creating a workplace that doesn't suck. So you put together a handbook for people like me, right? For other leaders around the world to create a workplace that doesn't suck. First, before we dive into the book, right? What was the inspiration for you to want to put this book together?
I was never the person that had on my bucket list, write a book. I really wasn't. I know a lot of people do, and it's very admirable, but you can probably tell I'm a fairly extroverted person, and writing a book just was not on my list. And I mean, it was hard enough for me to write a blog every once in a while or write a newsletter. So really it came down to, I'm just so passionate about this work. I really, like, back to the title of Workplace Crusader, I really feel like people need people like me to be out there fighting for them to create better workplaces. I think it is incredibly sad that if you look across engagement scores, the Gallup polls keep getting worse every year. People are unhappy at work. They are disengaged. It's not good out there. And I mean, job security, yes, yay. But for me, I'm like, this needs to change. And so while I was starting to, in FLYN, so co-founded FLYN with my partner, Decio Mendez, 10 years ago this year. And we were just starting to see these threads about culture and kind of what the tenets were for creating a good culture. And I just saw it as a way to like get the word out, whether it was just so that people knew what I did and could talk to me about it, or they could actually just take it and use it. For me, it was just like one more way to get it out there in the world so that people could start talking about it and hopefully start changing the way that work happens.
Okay, so I buy this book and I read it, right? What are some of the basic tenets? How do I, as a leader, create a workplace that doesn't suck?
So the first piece, and it's interesting because I literally was just having this conversation yesterday about this. It doesn't go away. The number one piece is a good culture isn't some cut and paste culture from, like, oh, I'm just going to use Google as an example because everybody always uses Google. Oh, Google has a good culture. Like, what do they do? Oh, they have ping pong tables. Great. We'll like cut and paste that into our culture and we'll have a good culture, right? People will be engaged. It'll be great. The good culture is one where your culture, which I define as the way that the work gets done, right? It's all those norms, behaviors, actions, processes, all the things. The way that the work gets done informs what your culture is. A good culture is one that supports your business strategy at the end of the day. So think about it, like an SEC culture needs to be very different than like a Disney culture, right? Why? Because the purpose of those organizations is different. So first and foremost, you have to have clarity. So step number one, clarity. What is it we're trying to do here? What is our purpose? What is our mission? What is our vision, right? Get that clarity around that. And then align your values and what we call our culture code, again, the way that the work gets done, to that, right? So if this is what we're trying to do here, this is the way that we have to be in order to support that purpose. right? So those two things, that's the very first thing that you have to do, is get that clear alignment and really clarification around how you even define this. So, I mean, it's like we say about anything. If you don't have a map, how are you going to get there, right? So, what are we trying to do, and how do we need to be in order to do that, right? And then get really clear on what we mean by those things. So, it's one thing to say like, "Oh, we need to be generous." Okay, well, what does that mean? We need to be transparent. What does that mean, right? So, taking it to that next level is what we call that culture coding piece, where it's like, I, as any employee, could just pick it up and be like, okay, these are my guideposts. You're not going to have every scenario, you're not going to have everything, but like, this is what's kind of expected of me, and how we need to be as an organization, and how I need to show up as an individual. And what that then helps with is kind of the next steps, which is around recruiting and onboarding and development, where you can start aligning all of those things with that. So if I'm a potential employee, I can see, oh, this is their purpose. Oh, this is how they expect us to be. And it's okay. Like it's like anything else. Like there won't always be 100% match, but at least you're upfront about it, and I know what I'm getting myself into. So I'm not electing to be part of an organization that doesn't align with my values, right? And you can also attract those people that are aligned with that purpose and values. So really starting at that top around that clarity is number one, because it's hard to do anything else if you don't know what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the Google example is always, it's the example of the best and of the worst, right? I mean, it's the worst exactly. because not too many of us can live up to what they've set in terms of the perks, right? But if the work is hard to get done, it doesn't matter how many ping pong tables you have, right? Or how many perks that you have, right? You have to fix, make getting the work done either easier or more in a more inspiring way, or with more energy and enthusiasm,
or more aligned. More aligned is what I always say. When there's a disconnect, when there's a dissonance between like what we say we are and what we're trying to do and what we're actually doing, that's when people put their hands up. Like, look, work can be hard, and it can be, you know, you can be spending a ton of time on it. It could be stressful, but if you're aligned, it can still be super engaging, and you can feel really good about it, right? So, I mean, there's tons of projects I've worked on where I'm working around the clock, and it's hard, and it's, you know, all these things, whatever, but like we're so aligned and we're so in flow and we're on it. And it's because we're all agreed, like, what are we trying to do here? And how do we agree that we're going to go about doing that, right? So the perks at the end of the day, I hate to say it, don't really matter. They are nice to have. And there are some table stakes when you've got a good, economy where the employment rate is unemployment rate is low, right? Like that, you know, there's some table stakes that happen, but that's kind of what they are. I always go back to Dan Pink's, like, what really motivates people. And he talks about this, like, they need to be aligned with purpose. Number one, they need to be able to have some sort of autonomy. Like, nobody wants to be micromanaged. I want to be able to know that, like, my voice matters in this, right? And I need to be mastering something. I need to be learning and growing always. Like, those are human things that keep us engaged above and beyond the table stakes. Like, I need to be paid fairly. So, you know, equitable pay. And that sometimes involves the perks, but otherwise the perks don't really have an impact. We know this above and beyond table stakes.
Becky, if people want to get more of all this good wisdom and these tips, where can they buy the Good Culture Leader's Guide to Creating a Workplace That Doesn't Suck?
Oh, it's everywhere. I mean, you can go to my website, which is FLYN, FLYN consulting.com, and you can find all the things there, but it's on Amazon. So you can find it there, or any of your other online retailers. It's not in stores. I decided to keep it just online.
Excellent. Well, that website, again, is scrolling on the bottom of the screen. If you are watching on YouTube, it's FLYNconsulting.com, FLYN consulting.com. So, Becky, we have now reached the point of, we've been having a lot of fun, right? But we like to have even more fun at the end of each episode. So, would you mind? I'm going to ask you some really quick hitter questions.
Okay.
The first thing that comes to mind.
I'm ready.
All right. Favorite class at Penn State?
It's probably my speech comm class, my speech comm 101, which a lot of people will take. It was the one that finally made me actually prepare for things like speaking. It has taught me so much. That class was fantastic. I recommend it to anybody, even if you're not required to take it.
How about if you can have dinner, who would it be and why?
Oh, if I could have dinner, who would
Dinner
it
with
be?
anyone. Who could it be and why?
I'm reading Brene Brown's book right now, and the Dare to Lead, and I think I have some questions for her.
I have some questions for Brene too, but that's great. Where would you take her in the Bay Area?
Oh gosh, I'd probably take her to Greens, which is a fully sustainable restaurant on the Bay, and it's been around for a really long time. It was like the first one, and it's beautiful.
Excellent. How about your most unusual "we are" moment, where someone like saw you and recognized you as a Penn Stater and yelled out "we are," or you did it to someone else?
It's funny. I was listening to Lisa Lambert's People of Penn State one, and we're both in California, right? So we don't get a lot of Penn Staters around here. And funny side note, whenever I'm back at Penn State, every time I see like a Penn State state, I'm like, oh my gosh, they went to Penn State. Like I'm so programmed to not see any Penn State paraphernalia that it's really funny for me. I keep getting surprised. But I have had so many like just random shout outs when I'm wearing my Penn State gear because I wear it a lot. But there was one time in New York City where I have on the back of my phone, I've got like a Penn State pop-up, whatever you call it. And I was in a bar in New York, and I had it sitting up, and I was there with my business partner, and the owner of the bar came over and was like, "Did you go to Penn State?" And I was like, I mean, he didn't shout "we are" in the middle of the bar, but close enough. He was like, "Did you go to Penn State?" And my partner was like, "Really? Like even here, like even right here in this moment," because he had seen it happen so much. So it does happen a lot for me.
That's amazing. How about your favorite Penn State sport?
I have to say football. It really, I mean, that first moment when I walked into that stadium as a freshman, I've never felt anything like that ever, and probably never will. I mean, it's been repeated, right? But like,
Sure.
it's so special that the community and the energy that's at those games. But I love all the sports. I'm so supportive of all of them, and I'm just so proud of our school and all that they do. And I have so many friends that are athletes. Shout out to Susie Paxton, who is a 92 grad Olympian in fencing. Like, how would I have ever been exposed to a sport like fencing had I not gone to Penn State?
Exactly. How about your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
So funny because I was actually looking this up because I'm so boring. I love vanilla. It's just pure and simple. But I have to put a shout out. There's a flavor up there right now. I was looking this up for other reasons. There's an entrepreneur chip monkey business one that's up there right now, and I just have to give a shout out to that. I don't know what it is, but I will try that the next time I'm there because I'm just like so excited that there's something just for us entrepreneurs.
That's amazing. So you're the first person on the People of Penn State to pick that flavor. And I'll also share with you the #1 bestseller at the creamery is vanilla ice cream.
Well, there you go. Yes. I hit both sides of it.
There you go. Well, Becky, we are so grateful that you joined us on the People of Penn State and have allowed us to share your story with other Penn Staters. We're truly grateful.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much for having me. So much fun and just so much love for all that you do. Thank you, Paul, for putting this out there for everybody.
Thank you. And thanks to our producer, Vincent Longaro, and our guest relations coordinator, Abby Clark, for all the good work they do behind the scenes. And of course, we want to thank you for tuning in. If you like this episode, I hope that you'll subscribe to the People of Penn State podcast in your favorite podcast app of choice. And while you're there, go ahead and drop a review, give us a rating. It helps other Penn Staters find these great stories. If you're a member of the Penn State Alumni Association, Thank you, thank you, thank you for your support. And if you're not yet a member, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too could become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thanks for tuning in and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are